Next up, we have Andreas Jung, and I think he has a pretty topical topic for today. So, a fool with a tool is still a fool. Why we must use AI wisely. Welcome, Andreas.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andreas Jung. I'm from Germany, and I'm a software engineer and architect since many, many years, but later that. So my talk today is about AI in software development. So basically, I guess every one of you is basically somehow related to software. So this topic is for you. I will show you some cases where AI helped us in the past, but also where it was basically hurting us in projects. So just to get started, here are some funny AI incident happened over the last 1 or 2 years. There was one case lately where basically an AI coding tool basically just deleted a production database with a few thousand users. There was some AI at a car dealership just offering its own cars for $1, which is not that funny from the business perspective. Then some lawyers using in US and Australia AI tools for generating whatever documents go to court with wrong or improper citations, which is not funny from the legal point of view. And there was also some Air Canada chatbot just giving false information. Basically, Air Canada basically had to pay for improper information and pay for compensations. So I'm a software developer since many years, using Python since 1993, so almost 33 years, and I'm also using Plone, supporting Plone, doing Plone projects since 2002 or 3, can't recall. So basically, pretty long time. And I'm a freelancer doing lots of projects, software development, software architecture, enterprise architecture. In the field of energy lately, a lot of pharmaceutical projects, and yeah, basically my role over the last years was basically being a project saver, just because of my experience and my long-time experience in Python development. So I'm talking today about first about the current state of AI in software development, just a rough overview about the tools that we have. I will talk about a bit safe practices in AI, and I will show you or tell you where AI actually works right now for me, from my perspective. I will talk about vibe coding, which is actually something that came up over the last months as a new trend in AI. And I will basically give you some examples where we have been using AI and vibe coding in projects and how the experience was. But first, let's look at what we have right now on the AI market. So the complete market changes a lot. That's just a rough overview what we have right now. Usually, most people are using stuff like ChatGPT, Claude Code by Anthropic, or Google Flash right now. They differ by pricing, by context windows, and stuff like that. So basically, this is all changing every day or every night. And they basically differ by pricing, and the context window. The context window is basically the amount of data or information that an AI model can see, and this particular token window is basically something like a few 100,000 tokens, and usually one line of code basically boils down to 5 to 10 tokens, depending on the model. So where is AI working right now in a reliable way? I think most can agree that it's very useful when you basically create boilerplate code, test generations, generate documentation and migration, so that's perfect for that. It can be used for creating tests or test data. It's very useful for explaining code or documenting code and writing project documentation. And it offers support for refactoring and migrations. But the downside, at least from my perspective, why AI notorious fails and fools us, or particularly me, is a lack of self-reflection regarding completeness of work consistency of work, and correctness of work. And in many cases, AI was just lying at me. That's a general observation across all most recent AI models, both GPT, ChatGPT, Claude Code, but also others. But let me show you 3 examples of where we have been using AI. So it's just 2 successful projects and 1 project where basically failed. This is basically stuff from projects from the last 12 months where we have had AI involved in projects. The first project was with E.ON, one of the German larger energy providers, who had been basically in the field of guarantees of origins, basically certificate trade in the field of renewable energy. And I was pulled in the project where we basically had a FastAPI application running in Azure. And it was basically built over 2 years by some junior with some average knowledge regarding architecture and software design. So basically, we found an over-designed application, which was widely under-engineered. And we had something like 50% test coverage, and the application was very hard to maintain. So basically, a system that was working, but it was very hard to extend because you couldn't basically make changes because of the low test coverage. When I joined, we basically used Claude Code for bringing the test coverage up to something like 95% by basically building more and more tests. So basically, within 2 months or so, we basically came from 70 to about 400 different tests. And this was basically a success because we were just in position that at some point we had a widely covered code base and could basically then approach from that, basically cleaning up the mess, doing refactorings, and just implementing new features in a very same way because we had tests and we could basically rely on this test. And yeah. So this was basically a huge success 1 year ago. Next success story is basically a Plone project that I'm kind of still working on, was for the University of Saarbrücken in Germany. This is basically a project where we had an internal university-wide shop system and procurement system. History dates back to 2015, where basically I took over a project, and this was basically Plone Foresight with ArangoDB under the hood, on-premise hosting. And now, for compliance reason, we had basically had to migrate the shop to Plone 6 with decent UI, better functionality, so basically just complete modernization. And we also have been using Claude Code for basically generating the documentation, creating configurations for deployment, Terraform, Ansible, stuff like that. And the nice takeaway was basically that I was able or could basically work on stuff like front end or deployment. So all topics I'm usually trying to get around. So basically, AI enabled me to basically work on these aspects of the project successfully. Now the funny part. That project was for the Open Grid Europe Foundation. OGE is basically the provider in Germany for all the gas distribution networks in Germany. So basically, they maintain something like 1,200 kilometers of gas pipelines in Germany. And the German government decided some years ago to basically enable all these networks for hydrogen distribution, just because of the Ukraine war and Germany's dependency of Russian gas. So at some point, they basically had put me in the project because they had no software by basically performing a simulation if their pipelines would basically could work with hydrogen, because hydrogen has basically other physical parameters, like about 1/10 of the density of natural gas. So basically, we had to basically provide or write a simulation for these pipelines. So The physicists started with some code. So basically, they were expert in thermodynamics, material science, and stuff like that. So they basically, at some point, started with AI and trying to get something working. The problem was basically that they have been using ChatGPT. So basically, the situation was basically the physicists or non-programmers were basically trying to program using AI. They generated code doing something, and in the end, they got stuck because they couldn't manage to get the last 20 or 30% of the simulation done. So basically, they got stuck and basically pulled me into the project for basically fixing or getting all their crap code done using ChatGPT in order to write something that was working. So basically, they just had a bunch of AI-generated Python codes, pretty long, no tests, no specifications, and this was basically the situation. And at some point, we managed to basically generate a test suite of something like 300 tests using Claude code. But fortunately, they ran out of money, and this was basically then the point to run away. Anyway, let's talk about vibe coding. Who has heard of vibe coding, or who has been doing vibe coding? So just a short introduction. There's a definition by the former senior director of AI at Tesla. I'm just not reading the statement. But in short, basically, vibe coding means building software by iterating prompts with an LLM without deep code reviews. So basically, the promise basically, you as a non-programmer should be enabled to write small applications or build software in general. That's basically the promise. The wider promise is basically that vibe coding should enable or democratize the coding aspect, so anyone should be enabled to build software. Something like faster time to market, rapid prototyping, coming together with lower costs and resources. And basically the role of an AI is basically something like an orchestrator in a software project. So these are basically the promises of vibe coding. But I tried that as an experiment. So the foundation was basically my own company site, Sobix.com, which was an old WordPress site. I know. That's why I made the experiment. And the idea was basically taking the content of the site and basically trying to build something from scratch automatically without any coding. I decided to use Astro.js, which is a static site generator based on JavaScript, using Tailwind CSS for the styling, stuff like that. And I basically had the text of the old page, I had my CV as PDF, and basically said, okay, here's the data, and please generate a prototype for that. So basically, the first draft of the website was basically nicely working. I had some excellent AI-generated marketing text. The wording was okay. So basically, the first draft was perfect, but then at some point, the mess started to grow. So basically, at some point, AI was basically messing up its own code. It on particular changes, it basically just worked on some aspects of what it was supposed to do, like something like changing two components rather than all components. So in the end, I never had the impression that the AI is basically doing all the stuff that I wanted it to do. Basically something like translate all the content of the German tree to English or to French. At some point, I gave up. That's basically a problem, I guess, from the limited context side. So basically, the AI has just a particular view on the system, and basically it forgets stuff that it has been doing before.
Quicker than we. Quicker than we forget the stuff.
Right. So basically, this was an experience, but it took me then 2 days for fixing it manually. But so basically, had the text and basically with some better prompting, then I managed to get a version of that project. So when we look at the reality, as said, from my point of view, web coding works best for for minimal products, where always a human should be in the loop for basically doing the oversight, something like debugging, testing, and validation. We need to ensure that, we must be prepared that fragile code is being generated with all the outcomes that from AI-generated code. Here are some other issues that are related to vibe coding that we must take into account. AI can generate code where you basically have an unknown provenance. So basically, AI is trained with a lot of material, and you actually don't know if the generated code has copyright, has license issues, stuff like that. And then, in addition to that, we must be aware of the copyleft drift from GPL and HGPL. There's a patent risk and the transparency issues, duties that we have under the European AI Act. So there are a lot of things that must be considered. So what are the responsibilities for us as software developers or senior developers? Who of you would consider being a senior software developer? Junior level? Okay. So we as software developers, we are basically still responsible for everything that we deliver to our customers as a product. So AI generates something, we are accountable. We must own the correctness for the delivery that we deliver basically to our customers as products. Also, we as developers are basically responsible where we are using AI and how we are using AI. So basically, we must define the guardrails and the red zones. Basically, we must basically tell the AI what to do. Also, we as the quality gates, we must review the AI-generated code because it's like code coming from a junior developer. We don't know exactly what's within the code because we are just responsible as developers. So the main idea or the main approach to AI, using AI in software development is basically that we should act as architects. We basically predefine the architecture and should use AI in a way that basically the generated stuff fits into our architecture. All right, so coming to an end. Hold on. So from my perspective, AI is a tool, but wisdom is a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. I think for this presentation, you will have questions or comments.
Sure.
Yes.
With all this AI stuff and all this, it might even do something else in a month, even if I feed it the same prompt today again. And everything points to how do we control it? And your last sentences were also track your PRs, but track the metrics, track the prompts. I wouldn't even know at the moment how to track all of this in a proper structure and so that I can find it again. It seems to me that the next thing that is needed is a framework to log, monitor, control, track AI in everything that we do. Because also the danger in, I'm just chatting with it, of course, keeps me into a completely different mind space. I'm not thinking about tracking at all. And then I have some code and I can probably have a hard time retracing that. Do you know of anything that helps bringing back a little bit of structure into that chaos?
I think there are a lot of approaches right now. So basically the idea is something like bills of material that we have for our software inventory, like using modules ABC, versions, version control, licenses and stuff. So basically, this is basically what we have right now using in some projects, like bill of materials. And what people say is basically record your prompts, record the results in order to trace back what you basically had as input for your AI. In case, for example, of license violations or patent violations, in order to basically track that and record that in some way, but I'm not sure if that is feasible.
Everything manually at the moment. I need to remember and do it myself.
Perhaps log all the output of your AI. See, I'm not sure if this is feasible, but I think at least in some scenarios like regulated markets or in critical systems, perhaps there are some approaches or some regulations. So basically, we don't have anything like that in the legislation, not even in the EU AI Act. So this AI Act is about transparency, but it doesn't say anything about how you would handle that, or would have to handle that.
All right, next question. Yes.
Hi. How about reinventing test-driven development in the AI era? You write a test as a software developer, and you ask to your AI agent to create the code that is working for that test. In this way, we have that kind of monitoring that is in our development cycle. What do you think about this?
Is it different from the human approach? So in test-driven development, we basically would write the test first and then make the implementation. That's arguable if TDD is basically the right approach. So there are many people basically would argue that it's basically not different from the human way because as a developer, you perhaps make false assumptions about the test or the implementation or both. I had when I was rewriting my own site, I basically asked the AI to double and triple check if the work is done completely by basically, okay, I have 10 sub-pages in German, do the translations and basically count or compare the number of generated pages, and usually it lied. It says okay, but it just generates 3 translations rather than 10. So the human factor basically just controlling the stuff still needed. And I'm not sure if this AI generated stuff provides a better software quality in the long run for us developers. And I don't know the impact about product business. So basically, if a product will become better or stable or worse, depending on the amount of AI code goes in.
one more question. The points you mentioned on that slide, it's actually very good points, but it's only applicable for the situation when actually a senior developer works with LLM, AI, doesn't matter how you call it, as a tool. But the problem with large language models is that they are accessible like for very wide audience, not only senior developers. And at some point, maybe it's actually already happening, we will be just overwhelmed with the amount of code generated by highly motivated, poorly educated people using AI. And it's already a project, I don't remember which, but some open source projects are already facing with the situations of pull requests committed by people who even doesn't understand what this pull request is about. And the question is, do you have any ideas how can we live in such situation? How can we survive in such world that's changing in that direction?
At least in the open source space, it's very hard. You have basically a limited number of resources, people working on the project, and basically if some AI bot's basically flooding your project with generated whatever, might be wrong, might be right. I think you need some, at least from the project perspective, you need some kind of policy, like all code must be human-made. I think the OpenBSD people basically refuse to accept.
I don't remember.
Yeah, stuff like that. And but you're right. Basically, I also heard from a report that basically some projects basically just got flooded with shitty code or basically false positives regarding security stuff like that.
My point is that it's not necessary the code is like necessarily shitty. The point is that developers will be overwhelmed by the amount of such code.
Sure.
What to do? I don't know.
Well, I'm actually not a Plone code developer, but basically one of the Plone maintainers or developers could basically perhaps comment on that. So it's basically a decision that must be made by the individual project maintainers, I guess.
All right. Thank you, Andreas.